it's crazy because now with technology, we can have these interruptions and stuff. And yeah, this is something that I'm not used to. I'm still getting used to it. I'm like a squirrel. Like when I hear this shit go off, like I'm like, squirrel. Like, oh my god, like I gotta react. Like I gotta respond. Like it could be important or whatever. So I think that might be one of the effects of me being incarcerated. So yeah, I think being adopted affected me because I had that desire to want to, uh, know who I was. I was always on a journey to discover who I was, and um, so um, there were other factors that impacted my desire to want to be included. Um, um, but I won't go into those now. But I bring those things up because when I was living in the area that I was living in San Jose, um, we I didn't start out as a gang member, and I don't think any of us started out as gang members. I don't, those of us that were living in my neighborhood from the very beginning know that we ourselves never um, counted ourselves as gang members initially. I think um, society kind of labeled us as gang members, and I say that because um, the junior high school that I went with, we would all gather up and walk to school together, and then when we walk back home together, I'm not saying we was angels. Yeah, we got into stuff and all that, but when police stop you over the time, and they say, oh, we're not arresting you, we're just asking you questions, trying to see who you are, and they give you those FI cards, those field identity cards, and they identify who you were with at that time that they stopped you, the area that you were in, and all that stuff. Um, Little did we know it at that time, but they were actually building a case against us, or building cases against us that would be used later on to label us as gang members, and to compile a database of who kicks it with who and all that other stuff. Um, I never foreseen that or none of that. I thought I was just getting over, like, oh yeah, fuck it, they just gave me over the slap on the wrist. But actually what they were doing was building a case against me for later on in life. You know, and so yeah. Going back, just retracting a little bit. Um, when I was living in my neighborhood with those other people, we were living in an area where it was impacted by, it was a low income housing area. So we were all of our families were impacted by identical situations: low income, high drug use, um, violence, broken homes. All those things. And that was something that made it easy for all of us to kick it together, for all of us to gravitate together, because that's something that we could share together. Like, we couldn't share that with everybody because everybody didn't understand that experience. And saying that, yeah, of course we became close. you know. And as we grew older, um, and we started to experience things in life together, of course our bonds grew even tighter, as they should and as they would. So, you know, but that's still, as our bonds grew tighter and all that. Again, were we mischievous? Yes, we were. Just like any other kid, just like any other white kid or any other kid in America. You know what I mean? But in our low income area, where there were police officers already installed in the schools, that would, you know, bring down the full force of the law had we broken minor school infractions that could have been handled in house. So I mean, this type of exposure to the criminal, to just the authorities at that age, and you know the field identity cards always identifying us as being together and all that other stuff. Um, you know, it was easy um, for us to not only be shaped and labeled as gang members, but it was easy for us to identify as that as well. You know what I mean? And that's something that we took pride in. Um, you know, and I mean, it was just something that it was the one family that we had that we didn't have at home, and so it caused us to be, you know, as close as we could be, and you know, we defended each other to the death. I mean, and that's really what it was, you know, and that's really what it is. Do I brag about that or any of that? No, I don't, because um, you know, where other groups of kids grow up with groups of friends, go off to college, and you know, have careers and all that, we didn't have those same opportunities. You know, our schools didn't nourish that. You know, nobody tried to, you know, install that into us or anything like that. You know, it was just, I don't know, barely get them by and get them in and get them gone. So, you know, when I say that I'm a gang member, um, I am a gang member. I have some people that I will always be a gang member. I have tattoos on my body that will always identify me as a gang member that I refuse to get covered up because, you know, as a man, I am the sum of my experiences. I'm not ashamed of what I went through. I'm not ashamed of, you know, my experiences because all of those things make me who I am today. So, yeah, I just want to say that, you know, when I include the I was adopted, I include that because um, when I found out at about 7 years old, um, you know, it made sense because before then, I always wondered why I looked different than my family. You know, my family were darker skinned with, um, you know, coarser hair. I was lighter skinned with straight hair. And, you know, I always, and some people may think this is crazy, but I always wanted to be darker skinned. I always wanted to have nappy hair. You know, I always wished that, you know what I'm saying, my hair had to be sit there and be braided, and my nieces would be sitting there, you know, on the stool by the stove, you know, with the hot comb and crying and getting burnt at the scalp and the burning of the hair and, you know, all that. Like, you know, I wanted to be just like them, and I always wondered why I was different. So, you know, those are things that affect a person um, at an early age that'll send them on a different trajectory. Um, so I think it's important that I touch on the fact that yes, I am adopted, um, and you know there are definite um, challenges and thoughts and things that we experience um, when we find that out. Um, so yeah, I'm gonna mark that point as maybe some point that I wanted to introduce. But in continuing with this video, recent developments have happened over the last, what's today, Monday? So on Friday, I had got some news from my daughter that she had been in contact with my biological aunt. My daughter did an Ancestry and Me, a 23andMe thing with the swab and all that while I was in prison. So just recently, so when she did the thing, it came back. She found somebody who she thought might be her cousin or something like. So she wrote the person. She said, "Hey, look, according to this, I think we're related and all this." And so, um, um, you know, the lady at first was kind of standoffish and all that shit. But on Friday, the lady got back and said, "I think you are, in fact, my great niece." And so my daughter hit me, and I so we asked if my mother was still alive, and she said yes, she is in fact still alive. So I'm saying this to announce something that I never ever thought that I would announce, and that's the fact that I may have found my biological mother. For so many years, I've asked myself, like, I wonder why. Like, I wonder what had happened and all that. And I had put scenarios in my head. While I was in prison, I had met a nurse um, that had given me um, hey Siri, make a note to remind myself to write about the investigator for my adoption. Okay, cool. So, thank technology. Standing ovation for y'all. Love y'all for sure. So yeah, um, but so she paid for this investigator who found my uh, original birth certificate from when I was adopted. Found out that my last name is Thomas. My dad's name is Thomas, and so uh, um, in finding out my original birth certificate, my state number. I guess you get two birth certificates. You get a state number and a birth certificate number. And so once we found that information out, think we were able to track some things down, find the adoption agency in Santa Clara. But I'm in prison. Make contact with them. Initially, they give me a letter with all kind of non-identifying information about my mother and father. And so when I seen that my mother was Italian and my dad was black, and she was 23 and he was 43, I was like, I said, in my head, I had thought that, hey, maybe it was just one of those things, because this was back in the day. Jim Crow is still, you know what I'm saying? That shit is still active. Them sentiments are still there. And so, I was thinking like maybe it was just one of those things where she was a white girl, he was a black, and it just wasn't gonna work out. And lo and behold, one of the things that my mama say to my biological aunt, and so my biological aunt never told her sister that she was literally talking to my daughter, and then my daughter was relaying information to me. I never wanted to get in it because since they already had the magic going, I was just letting her go with it, and so she ran with it, and so yeah. But so new discovery, I may have found my mom. Stay tuned for that one.